And welcome to another episode of Nights at the Round Table. It's your boy Man Wheezy. Today I'm joined with my queen, which is very rare
Hello,
here
I'm back.
here in Nashville. And we got our homie Carlos Rodriguez from the Happy Givers out in Puerto Rico.
I'm not even kidding. It's very possible while we're recording, cars will drive by. It's not even a joke. It's happened all the time when I'm recording here.
That's in Puerto Rico. In San Jose, we used to have the cars roll up. The Mexican cars, they come play basketball at the park by the house every Saturday, and their horn went. Oh,
I had that. I had that on my I had that on our Volkswagen van. Yeah, but my dad had a old Beetle Volkswagen van.
Beautiful.
And you could play 13 different songs, and that was
it was dance.
We thought we were so dope with that.
When we go to like a local basketball game here in Puerto Rico, people literally take those horns out of their car, they bring it into the stadium.
No way.
We're so loud. We're so loud.
I gotta spend more time.
So loud. Let me tell you, Carlos.
Stop.
As a Mexican married into a Puerto Rican family, let me tell you how many times I've woken up thinking when I'm at my in-laws' house, thinking everybody's arguing in the living room about scrambled eggs, but that's just regular communication.
It really is.
Just Puerto Rican communication.
That's just how we talk. Sometimes we have guests here from at the nonprofit from other nations, and the team. We're just talking to each other. They're like, "Is something wrong?" We're like, "No, we're just talking. We're live."
I tried so long to get her to understand that this level, the volume, it's just passion. It's like our passion. It's how we communicate when we get excited about stuff.
It's real fun in marriage, let me tell you.
Yeah,
especially when I'm like a 9 that shuts down at confrontation, and his regular voice is passionate. It's fun.
Well, my wife of 18 years is from Sheffield, England.
British
flower from the north.
Wow.
Where everything's very proper, where they literally put their pinky finger up.
Wow. With their so she rescued you.
She sure did. Or I rescued her because she's the loudest British Puerto Rican in history. She lives in Puerto Rico. She loves the rice and beans. She loves the ocean. She loves living here. And in our community, she's literally the only British person. Everybody knows my wife. She speaks Puerto Rican with a British accent. Imagine Harry Potter translated into, it's beautiful.
That's
she
adorable.
went for it, and she's one of us, 100%.
I love it.
I love that. So you guys been married for 18 years.
18 years, yeah. We got 3 kids, 2 boys. Our daughter Isabella, who we adopted from Ethiopia. Alejandro, our eldest, was born in England, same hospital of his mama. Sebastian, our second, was born in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we used to live and pastor. So yeah, we got basically 5 nations in the family, which is pretty cool.
Wow. So this is important for people who may not know who you are. Like, give us an overview. I don't want to say a bio, because I used to hate bios because they're so formal. But give us
Carlos is so passionate about.
Yeah, I know, right?
In the third person.
Give us an informal introduction to you and what you do. So for those who don't know you.
Yeah. So born and raised in Puerto Rico, and the really long story short, I was doing pre-med at the University of Puerto Rico. I had one of those classic kind of come to Jesus moments, literally in a Billy Graham crusade, walked to the front. Oh, I feel forgiven, and got really involved in church. And then when I was doing pre-med, I went to this school of ministry, which is, was the thing in the 90s, go to a school of ministry somewhere. You do like 3 or 4 months of classes, and then you go on some missions trip.
Right.
Everything changes. Classic.
Yeah.
So I did that. And then stayed in Toronto. That's where I met my wife, Catherine, from Sheffield, England. I got ordained as a pastor. My parents are crying because I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a pastor. But yeah, I found, it was the first time that I found kind of the outlet for what I was always feeling inside of my heart. We grew up in a family that was really broken, alcoholism, abuse, and unfortunately, it was normalized. Like, that brokenness is normal. Mm-hmm. That's what dad does. That's what men do. That's what women have to deal with, that type of thing, right? And in Toronto, it was kind of like, wait a minute, I don't have to be that. I don't have to follow those patterns. I can be different as a husband, as a man. But at the same time, I do want to honor the beautiful parts of my culture, the passion, the loudness, and so, it was a long journey, especially married to a person from such a different culture than mine. And it was in that pastoring. I did 10 years in Raleigh, North Carolina, just before moving back to Puerto Rico. And again, really long story short, I just really discovered the parts of the American Christianity, churchianity, really, that were really like, wait, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
I don't want to be this kind of a person. This is not how I want to use church funds. This is not how I want to be a husband, telling everybody family's first, but really the church was first. And so Hurricane Maria hit the island of Puerto Rico in 2017, the very night that I'm releasing my second book, Drop the Stones. And there's this big picture of me in Barnes and Nobles, and I'm doing signings for my book, and I feel really spiritual. And I literally practice in the mirror, like, chapter 4, loving like the Lord, right? Having this whole moment of like, I kind of made it. Like, I'm in my 30s, my second book. I got all these bookings of places to go and preach. And then Hurricane Maria is destroying the island. And 2 nights after that, a friend of mine who was a missionary in the Middle East called me and said, don't waste your life being a talking head. Who cares about your book? Like, go live it. Go back to Puerto Rico. He lived a good Christian man who was using curse words to really like get it into me. Like, do not waste your life. I did it. The conference circuit sucks. You're going to hate yourself for it. So that was really the come to Jesus moment, where either the platform with the book, or it was either the island and the need. And we moved back to Puerto Rico. And so we lead the Happy Givers nonprofit here.
Wow.
That's interesting, because we had a whole conversation yesterday. We shot a podcast about this exact thing. So we were discussing the I don't know if you've seen it, the documentary for the Hillsong documentary. So we've
seen it.
Yeah, we talked about it, but it was very much, we're not into, crapping on churches. So it wasn't like that kind of conversation. It was more so like, is there a point where a church or a pastor can get so big that he works himself into a place of like an easy way to fall? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, I don't know too many people that can juggle power, fame, money, and still be like of the people. When you get that high, you can't really, like, you can't. And there's reasons for it. And I think in your own mind, you can justify why. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was telling them about a pastor once, one of my favorite pastors. And I remember I did a show at his church, and people weren't allowed in the same hallway. Like, his security would clear the hallway, and then he can come.
Bro.
And we were just kind of like over here. And I'm like, I just performed at his church, and I couldn't even be in the same hallway.
That's
now,
wild.
I was like, I didn't take it a certain way. They told me it's security, it's whatever. And I'm like, I get it. Okay, so maybe something bad happened, maybe whatever. I get it. But it made me think, is that a good place to be, where you cannot be amongst the people because you've gotten to this height or this popularity that you no longer can be common?
Listen, I was pastoring a church in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's kind of like, North Carolina is like the end of the Bible Belt.
Yeah.
So it's like the buckled part that stings the most. It was painful. It was 10 years of pain.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Really?
And in a bizarre way, being in a green room, which again, there's an element of security and whatnot, but I'm pastoring this church. I know that there's people in need in this church. I know there's a community 5-minute drive from my church. And one of the biggest parts of the budget in a church conference was the green room. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm kind of processing like, and I'm using, as a Puerto Rican, I kind of grew up with the Catholic liberation theology conversation around me. So there's this whole thing of God's preferential treatment for the poor. And I grew up in that culturally. But I'm in these green rooms, and I'm constantly feeling like, I don't know, there's something off.
Yeah.
Because again, there's the safety, the security, whatever, but then there's Jesus, and then there's the poor, and then there's the need. And so my wife and I always say, the 10 years of churchianity for us were mostly finding out our no's. And I don't know who coined this phrase, it's not mine, but they call it the South Star, which basically you're going in the direction you think you're meant to go, but you're mostly figuring out, wait a minute, that's definitely not what I want to do, or that's definitely not how I want to do it.
Yeah.
And in the context of church, it was like, I definitely don't want to preach this version of the gospel. The Trump era happens, and I'm like, I definitely don't want to be like associated with this world and with this language and with this rejection of migrants and with this hatred of Black people. And wait a minute, you struggle with the phrase Black Lives Matter, just that basic thing. And so the South Star really leads you to a place where you're like, that's not who I want to be. That's not how I want to do parenting. That's not how I want to be married. That's not the gospel that I want to be preaching. And it's a beneficial thing because all the no's then lead you to the North Star, which is the yes.
Right.
It's
so
such a good message.
And it's a good message. It's the problem is it's so painful because you're constantly hitting a wall of like, oh, even the most painful for me, prideful Puerto Rican man, is like, oh, I actually thought I was really good at that, and I'm terrible at it. I'm actually, and so you're hitting all these no's even within yourself, and it's the beautiful surrender, like definitely not here, but here. And for us, that was Puerto Rico. That was the need. That was the community. That was going back to our roots. That was farming, which I stink right now because I've been farming all day. It's all these like simple things that in the church, in the green room, I would have said for somebody else.
Right.
Where it's now, it's the biggest yes in my heart.
But I love how in that message, it's also there's no wasted time, that things are not wasted. Your whole 10 years there was not a waste. It was so much lesson, so much being learned in that I just think that's such a good message for people listening who are constantly, we're all wanting to just do the right thing, be on the right, as long as I just know I'm on the right path, as long as I just know that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, God, should I do this or should I do this? Like, God, give me direction. Should I do this or do this? And within that, we get caught up wanting to just make the right decision and be in the right season. And then time can go by, and then you can find yourself in a situation like you were 10 years later going, oh, actually, it's not where I want to be. But to look at it in that way of, thank God I was following this South Star so I could see all the things that I don't want to be so that I can be right where I'm supposed to be. And
the important thing is that you need, you need the South Star so that when you turn around and start chasing the North Star, you're chasing it with no regrets. Because this is the same thing that I had to deal with when it came to music, when I was in the Christian industry.
That's good.
I was like, the amount of times that I wanted to write a song about something deep, like depression, suicide, masturbation, like stuff that's all like real stuff that people, I think, deal with. Yeah. And I wasn't allowed to. And there was always a formula, 2 verses of struggle. The third verse or the bridge has to be the Jesus comes. And I'm just like, man, nah, some people's third verses are still shitty as the first verse. You know what I'm saying? It's not, there is no good right now. And they need to know that in the bad, that there's still love, that the crazy thoughts that they have is still okay with God, and God isn't afraid of the ugly. And when I got out of it, I was like, oh man, this is all the things I don't want to do. And I didn't feel any kind of like angst towards them. I wasn't mad at them. I wasn't like, I didn't talk crap about people who were in it. I just knew I can never go back to what that was. So now as I'm looking to my North Star, it's like zero regrets, nothing pulling me back. I already did that. And now I'm feeling good. Me and B always quote J. Cole, and he says, which is hilarious because exactly what you said. He said, good news is, nigga, you came a long way. Bad news is, nigga, you went the wrong way. and we always quote
We're going to make some shirts. J. Cole asked permission.
It was like Pastor Cole was preaching
Pastor Cole.
So it's where you're at.
It is incredibly liberating to know that God can turn all the crap into fertilizer. It's like a beautiful, but again, there's the pain, right? So there's the element of learning, which is so good. And then there's the element of healing, which takes work. And so for Catherine and I specifically, as a married couple, just because we're from different cultures, but now we're doing ministry together, which has all its own complications. It wasn't just, oh, this is our South Star, these are the things we don't like. It was also like, oh, these are all the things we don't like in here. And oh, wait a minute. I used to think I really was not like my dad. And in a bizarre way, I was like, my dad was abusive and he was angry and he was all this, and I'm better than him. And then eventually, actually, I wasn't unfaithful to my wife with another woman, but I was being unfaithful to her with the church. The church she was the one. She was number one. And I'm not being abusive like my dad was in that physical kind of raw way, but I am with my words and with my control and manipulation. And so, oh, wait a minute. I still have all these things that I have to work on. And it was through a painful journey of therapy. I mean, I would say 3 straight months of me trying to convince the therapist that it was Satan's fault, it was the church's fault, it was my wife's fault. And he's like, brother, it's not until you fully 100% take responsibility for you and all the wrong choices you made. And so, again, there's the beauty of the crap into fertilizer. And then there's also I need to get my hands dirty, and then I need to plant the seed, and I need to water those things that I was stepping on in the past, and I need to work on this garden. I need to work on my marriage. I need to work on myself. I need to work on rest, and so that's been part of, bizarrely, the work of the nonprofit is nonstop. There's so much need. There's so much hunger. There's so much pain. Another storm is coming, all et cetera, et cetera. And yet, because it's the North Star, it's just like we can, do the work and love the people. And we need to stop, we stop. And if we need to go back to the therapist, we go back to the therapist. And if we need to take a break, we take a break, So there's so much learning still to be done. I'm glad at least that we feel like, we're in our yes. And in our yes, then we're healing in our yes.
Carlos, I have a question. When you were following the South Star and you were in the Carolina, and for those 10 years, and you were in the ministry, and you and your wife met in the ministry, and you're married in the ministry, and you guys are both on this path, did you both at the same time realize that, oh wait, this is a South Star we're following, not a North Star? Or did one of you kind of lead the charge of be like, ooh, I don't feel right in this? And was there any conflict or anything like that?
Why would you ask that? Why? Of course she realized first. Way first.
Really?
Actually, wow. The fact that she realized so much sooner created so much more tension. Because she's already aware, like, you know what? I don't want to be a pastor's wife. I don't want to be called first lady, which they do in the South to pastors' wives.
Yeah.
I don't, this is not what we married. This is not the dreams of our honeymoon. This is not what we were talking about. This is not the kind of parenting we wanted to do. So she realized so much sooner that it was a couple of years of all these clashes. And we got to the point, it's like, should we even be married? Like, let's work towards a healthy divorce. We got to that point. And so, props to her that she pushed through. Props to her that she challenged me, consistently was challenging me. Like, you think you're an improvement of where you came from, but you can be healthier than you are now. You can be kinder. Like, she would challenge me. And of course, my first reaction was like the enemy's using this woman to get me out of my calling. And she just needs to. And I'm in the platform, I'm using very like women liberation language in the church, and Jesus is for women, but at home I'm not living it. And so those 10 years again was me realizing so much of what I said was just BS. It was just, I almost knew what Twitter wanted to hear, so I'm going to give it to it without actually living it. I knew what, my more maybe progressive Christian friends, but I'm really not living it. I knew how to frame myself in specific, maybe more conservative platforms, maybe more center platforms. I knew how to play the game. That's the problem, that I was so freaking good at it.
Yeah.
And I hated myself that I was good at it, but I was so good at it, I kept doing it.
Yeah.
And so I used to be really good on stage. I have the microphone and I'm vulnerable enough that people say, wow, our pastor's so vulnerable. He's so real. But I was never vulnerable enough for people to say like, maybe he shouldn't be pastoring anymore.
Right.
Mess.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, let me put on the mask of the person that never wears a mask. Right. And so
wow.
I just fell for all those games. And again, it was borderline divorce. It was like almost a crumbling fully of my faith. And then realizing in the midst of all the pain that Puerto Rico was struggling with, I'm using all these church funds for bigger lights and bigger stages and bigger platforms and telling people we're building the kingdom of God. It really was my kingdom.
Right.
If I'm really honest. And telling people we're family, using all that, which is always so dangerous in church, using the family language, because that's easier to manipulate people that, volunteers and interns, and it's just family to get people. But we all have all this brokenness in our own family. So yeah, I'm still, forgiving myself and still learning and still realizing, so much of the damage that I was part of in that system. And how can we now create something different here at the nonprofit with our community, with, whatever platform we now have.
I love that, because your platform is doing such powerful work. I mean, that's how I found you. Like, cool. Bless God for your wife leading the charge and being like, this don't feel right. But then you running with that when you finally started following your North Star, because you drop diamonds on the internet. That is how I found you, because I was at a place in my walk, in my faith, where I was kind of like in our relationship, I was the first one to start being like, this don't smell, it smells funky in here. Something's not right,
Yeah.
And that caused tension for us too, especially because, like I said, he's real passionate. He likes to debate. Sure. He went to Bible college, summa cum laude, and I just operate on feelings where I'm like, I can't point to a scripture, but it don't feel right. Something's not right. But so I was at a place in my journey where I was just like questioning things weren't feeling right. And then I would find something that you put out there that would just resonate so hard with me. I'd be like, yes, more. What else did he say? What what I mean? So I'm so grateful for you and your wife.
Yeah, it really was the same exact kind of situation, because Ange broke through first, and of course my ego, my ability to argue, my studiousness. I know more of the Bible than her. I study more. I always have reasons for things that I do. I have evidence for everything that I bring up. And so to me, her argument was just so empty, because she just kept going on feeling. And mind you, like you, at that point, I'm touring the world. I'm telling people about Jesus on stages. And then at home, my wife is freaking like...
There's a legitimate financial component to it, of losing those connections, those platforms, it's real.
It's very much so. And here I am, like, in the back of my mind, my wife is... She don't even know if she believes in the Bible at this point.
She got crystals
and
now.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to say to these people? But I quickly realized as I continued to grow, and I've said this on this podcast before, the biggest thing was, I think the apex of our arguing, or our problematic relationship between the church and me and the love in her, was, half of her family is, part of the LGBTQ plus community. And I was always raised with the idea of love them, right? Hate the sin, love the sinner, which is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, because
it's never worked.
No one can do that. No one can do that. But we were taught that. We were taught be in the world, not of it. And that meant if you're talking to them, it's because you're witnessing. You ain't trying to be friends. You're not trying to be a part of their life. You just are there to witness. And so that was my mentality. And then I was forced into actual relationship because half of her family is gay. So I'm like, I'm at the family reunion. I'm at Christmas. I'm at all these places, and little by little,
and they're better family reunions than the ones.
Little by little, I'm just falling in love with them. I'm more and more they're loving on me, and I'm just like, oh man, my experience is not matching my theology. It's not the same. I don't have this fear. I don't have any of these things. And it completely wrecked me. To the point where then I joined her on the whole idea of deconstructing the faith and figuring out what was this really all about? Because it does not look, the church system that's been created does not look, and I don't think God would co-sign. And that's not, we know pastors in the system, so we're not talking ish, but something you said earlier, which I keep thinking, I've been to so many churches, and I'm sure you have too. And the amount of churches that have $1 million sound systems, but no food bank.
Yeah, that's wild.
I'm just like,
it's real.
It's literally what the tithe was for.
Yeah.
I can count on one hand the amount of churches that I've been to that had food banks, to where it's like a good portion of our money is going to have food, so that if anybody in our community is hungry, they can come to us and they got food, which was literally the purpose of the tithe.
Yeah. And that's, in the realization of that, even on my last year at this church, and I'm kind of turning already, Trump era is happening, and I'm trying to, let's put some things in place that are going to be different. Let's be different. Let's preach different. Let's preach Jesus. Let's preach Matthew 25. When you give food to somebody who's hungry, you're giving it to Jesus. When you give water, and then we look at the end of that year, the budget, and still pushing it, 2.5% of the budget was actually used to help the community, to help people in need. Wow. Even when we're trying to be intentional.
Wow.
And that's when I was like, it's like the whole system needs to change. Like we have to, from the roots level, it has to change. And so when I came to Puerto Rico on those first trips after Hurricane Maria hit, there's no running water, there's no electricity. It truly was like a bomb exploded. And we went into homes where there were dead bodies. Whoa. We went into communities where I met people in one trip, came back 2 weeks later, and they had died because there was no dialysis medication.
Oh my God.
They couldn't get blood transfusions. Like, I was exposed to all this need, and I go, but I still have that slight pastor mentality, like you were just saying, like, we're coming to serve, but it's really so we can win them to the Lord eventually. Like, yes, I'm going to love them in their brokenness, but it's still for a reason. It can't be pure. It can't be just service for service.
Right.
And so I go to this house because the mayor and this big community were like, there's this lady, she's super difficult, she's a hoarder, nobody wants to go there, her name is Victoria, her name is Victoria, like, can you take your team, see what happens? I show up to her home, it's like this little compound, and she's a santera, she practiced santeria, which is like voodoo, Catholicism, right? So she does santeria, which again, as a Christian, is like, prayer, oil, I did the whole thing. But I'm also trying to be like super cool. Like, I welcome everybody. I'm gonna love the sinner, but I hate her sin, and I hate her religion, but I love the sinner. And so I'm still going in that mentality. And to make the long story short, I get to Victoria's home, and she shouts from her house as I'm walking into the campus. I'm like, "Hey, Victoria!" And she's like, "Are you a Leo?" And I'm like, "What just happened?" July 30th. Yes, I'm a Leo. She's like, "I love when Leos come to visit." I'm already like, wait a minute, how is she right? I go to Victoria. We start to have a conversation. She's like, "I love your energy. I love your aura. And she starts like, it's not just that she practiced Santeria. She's Yoruba. She went to Nigeria. She got trained. Like, she knows what she's doing. And she's doing these prayers. And my brain, right? It's already like, how can I pray against the prayer that she's praying while also pretending to be kind and loving, It's so much baggage. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Can I just love this lady who's broken, who's rejected, who's trying to be kind in her expression of kindness towards me? And who knows? What if she's freaking right and I'm the one who's wrong?
Right.
What if that's the case, right? And so I just kept meeting people like Victoria. Victoria, to this day, she's part of our feeding program. We visit her 3 times a week. We've been into her home, and then she's had a tumor, so half the side of her body she can't really move. She has accessibility problems, and honestly, she's like a mom. She's calling me like, "Hey, why you haven't come see me? Like, come, I need to go to the pharmacy. Take me to the pharmacy." And I got to drop everything I'm doing, and I got to pick her up and take her to the pharmacy. And it's so liberating that baggage of I have to get her saved, and I got to get her into church, and I got to make sure that she learns about tithing, and I got to make sure she knows the right theological positions on sexual. Like, not having any of that has made me gain a mother, and has allowed me the privilege of serving Jesus through her. Like, she is the Christ in this area for me. And when I feed her, like, that's spirituality to me now. And it's just so liberating. It's so much better. I sleep better. She sleeps better. And it's just like, and to finish, I know we all have elements of theology. We all pick and choose which parts of the Bibles we like more than the other. We're all doing that. I'm choosing. If I'm going to be wrong, it's going to be the wrong in inclusion, in love, in acceptance, in radical, like, welcoming of everybody. Like, if I'm going to be wrong, I'm going to be wrong on that side. That's just been my choice.
Thanks so much, y'all, for listening to part 1 of this episode. We appreciate it greatly. Hey, like and subscribe if you guys are feeling this. Share it with your friends. We appreciate it so much. Please come back next week for part 2. Love you.